Legends of Tomorrow Season 3, Episode 5, Return of the Mack. This was definitely a funny episode, mostly because of the Return of the Mack stuff, with them playing the song, and the way they did, like, this crazy sequence of Damien Dark coming back to life, and Return of the Mack is playing as he's beating up everybody. So, definitely hilarious, just super funny as usual, seemingly dealing with vampires, which I was very curious how that was about to play out with it being comic books. Of course, it's like, oh, vampires don't exist. I mean, they're, metahumans in time travel, but at this point it's like, oh, yeah, that's sort of one of those weird up in the air things. And it's like, okay, are they starting to pull, further from comics, and especially with them going, like, back in time where it's like, old England, that sort of deal, and it starts off kind of Sherlock Holmes based. I was like, okay, where exactly are they headed with this? Because I was like, alright, this could totally be, a legitimate vampire, because it is, this is a series based off of comic books, and that thing exists in the DC universe. So it's just like, well, is this gonna happen? Is it not gonna happen? Ultimately, even though it's still supernatural, it is not in the vampiric way. It's more the crazy, weird resurrection way, which there's still a huge question up in the air of where the F did Damien Dark come from? Because I knew he was coming back to the season, and I knew, before I actually saw this episode, I'd seen something on Twitter, but I didn't know exactly who came back, and I was like, well, because they show like a random still, it was like a totally different person. And as the episode went through, I was like, well, it can't be Damien Dark. I kept thinking about this article that I didn't know who they were talking about, and I was like, it can't be Damien Dark, because it's like, where would he have come from? And we still don't really get that answer. Like, he just dropped out of the sky. Like, literally, he dropped out of the sky, and basically he was an anachronism, but it kind of doesn't make sense that he's an anachronism that was sent backwards in time. That's something we hadn't seen before. So it's just like, well, what in the world happened with him? Because, last we saw him was, of course, well, not counting this series, the current timeline version of himself was dead. Like, that body that fell out of the sky, for anyone who doesn't watch Arrow at least, for the body that came out of the sky in this episode, that was the version of Damien Dark that was killed by Oliver Queen during, I want to say, season 4 or season 3, whatever season he was in, I can't remember now. But that was him. Like, that's what happened there. Like, that was when he died, like, 2 years ago in the Arrow series. That's that version of Damien Dark. The one we had last season, and they show all of this was just, I guess, as a bit of a recap. That version of Damien Dark was before he went into Arrow. That was before he was the main villain of season 3. That's the version of Damien Dark we had. Now, this version of Damien Dark not only dealt with the Legends of Tomorrow, but he also went through being killed by Oliver Queen, and then somehow his body was just kind of tossed, way back in time, and now he's being resurrected by our main villain, Mallus, who we find out is kind of like this weird spiritual demon. Like, even though they didn't go the vampire route, they certainly went like the pseudo-demon route, which I thought was interesting. Also, super funny, and I've mentioned this a million times across the board. I swear, I don't know what the deal is with CW, but they must film every single show right next to every other show, because the woman who played the medium in this episode was just in Supernatural. Like, she was in, like, the whole last season of Supernatural. She was a really important character. And she just showed up, I want to say it was in last week's episode of Supernatural. They kind of brought her back for one. So it was so funny watching this, and it was just like, that is ridiculous. They love pulling characters where it's just like, this person died on that show, let's bring them over here. That's exactly, I mentioned that when Vixen first came into the show, she used to be on the originals. And it was just, it was super funny to me. I swear they do it with everything, and it's just like, there's that person coming over to, a different series. So I thought that was just really funny, and it would be even crazier, considering they didn't kill her off, and it wasn't, she was like the vessel for Mallus in this episode, but they didn't kill her and then Mallus moved on to Damien Dark or anything like that. She was still the vessel. So we're going to see her again, and it's just going to be super funny. I was like, she was just in the entire last season of Supernatural as, her name was just, a normal character, her name was Kelly. And it's just like, she was just in that show for an entire season, and then she moves on to this one, and it seems like she will be the vessel for Mallus for, some significant amount of time. And I just thought that was the funniest thing. I was like, wow, she was just in Supernatural, and then they brought her right over to this one. And that's just what they do on the CW. It's just like, oh, you're in that show? Well, come on over. It's like you're guaranteed to work somewhere else on the CW network. It's super funny. But her as a character I thought was actually really cool. We get to see that she is with she's tied to Mallus, and she's basically the vessel, by the end of the episode especially. But she knows what's going on with the amulet and everything, so her and Zari, she kind of messes with Zari. And I thought that was a pretty cool sequence, because I was super confused. It made no sense, technically speaking, but I guess if you count it from, it wasn't coming from that woman as like a medium, it was more coming from Mallus himself. I guess it makes more sense, because I have to assume Mallus is like almost throughout time, pretty much. It was making me, I think there's something they said in here that made me think of Savitar. If you watch like the last season of Flash, there was like, Mallus is in like every second of every moment or something like that. It was something they referenced. I was like, oh, that makes me think of Savitar. And I was like, okay, in that regard, what they did with Zari and her going to this woman made total sense, because during that scene when it first happened, I was like, how is she the medium for a dead person that won't die for hundreds of years? Like, that made no sense. And then I was like, oh, with her being the vessel of Mallus, he could channel that sort of experience, or he could channel, if they're actually talking to spirits, whatever it is, it makes more sense, because Mallus would have known, her history, and known that he could say these specific words about her brother, and it would seem legitimate. So I was like, alright, that kind of answered that question by the end of the episode, because at first I was like, this doesn't make sense. You can't connect with a dead spirit through time travel. I mean, I guess they could have explained like spirits, once they die, they're in all versions of time and every, something weird like that. But I was like, that just doesn't make sense. You can't connect with the dead spirit of someone that, at this point in time, with them being like in old London, is not even a spirit that's been born yet. So it was just super weird to me. But it's like, oh, she's the vessel for Mallus, and now it just makes a lot more sense. So, I thought it was definitely cool, and they kind of go through her having, Zari, having this moment, throughout the episode where she's dealing with her past and trying to figure out, in a weird sense, she's sort of trying to figure it out, but not really trying to figure out, her powers and things like that. And it's like, alright, well, I got my amulet, you got yours. I'm not really that interested in learning, though. I just kind of want to deal with some of the issues, more relevant issues, like my brother being dead. So, by the end, I thought they had a really great moment where she's like, that's my amulet, and she basically like summons the amulet back to herself. I was like, that was actually super awesome. So maybe that means we'll get to see her starting to, truly gain more control. We'll see the amulets do whatever they're going to do as far as like combining powers, and however that's going to end up playing out. But I thought that was definitely awesome, because I was like, okay, that's, her stepping up by the end of the episode. Like, now this is a bunch of crap. Like, my brother died for this, I got it back. And that was kind of the first step for her. And then, she was so devoted to, and it's her dead brother, it makes sense. But she was so devoted to learning more and trying to reconnect with, her lost brother, that she gave up, almost her destiny a little bit with having the amulet. And so she kind of gained control of her destiny by the end, where it's like, that's my amulet, and now I'm going to take it back and kind of use the amulet as the way to reconnect with my brother in, my own way now. So I thought that was definitely cool. Damien Dark coming back was definitely interesting, and he just beats everybody up. Of course, he doesn't end up killing anyone, because, of course. But aside from that, the really big thing that happened is Rip was just like the rogue agent. It almost didn't make sense. I was like, how in the world is this Rip Hunter right now? It was insane to me watching his character throughout this episode, because at first I was like, okay, Rip's doing his thing, he's hunting for Mallus. It makes perfect sense, no big deal. And then as things went on, it was like, okay, might need the legends. Sure, it's about them. That totally makes sense. And then it goes deeper and deeper, and it becomes so much about this crazy drive that he has, where he's questioning all sorts of, weird things. And it's just like, holy crap, he's turning on everyone. Like, he, by the end, is like, alright, well, screw the entire time organization that I created. I need you guys. Like, you guys are kind of the rebels. Like, no big deal. Let's go out. Let's do our thing. I need you guys to help me destroy Mallus. Like, that was his dead focus in this episode. Was like, we destroy Mallus. Nothing else matters. And that just didn't work for everybody else. It was like, nope, can't really do it. We need, basically we need the time police to come in. I can't think of the actual name of the organization that he made now, because I don't think it's Time Police. It could be. But it was like, we kind of need to work with them, because it's not just Damien Dark. We're having like our first crazy encounter with the Mallus character and everything. So it's just like, this is freaking nuts. Like, there's a lot that we need to do here. And Rip brings in his people, where it's like, all right, well, you won't help me. I'll bring in my people. Like, I'll bring in, the police, lock you guys up on the ship, and everything will be good to go. And then, of course, that completely fails, and then naturally, I was about to call them the rebels. The legends have to kind of roll in and save the day. And it was like, all right, yeah, that makes perfect sense. That's what happens. And because Rip kind of jumped the gun a little bit, and everything got screwed with Damien Dark being resurrected and everything, because he was so focused on really only destroying the vessel, in this woman. Like, I feel like that's all that would have happened anyway if he killed this woman, because they weren't actually bringing Mallus back. It was just bringing Damien Dark back, and then that was going to lead to the next step, eventually getting to Mallus. So he was kind of ahead of the game and thinking like, oh, it's this final moment, like it's going to be Mallus, and we need to do this. And it was like, actually, it's just like the next step, and he's kind of just building up his super villain minion army, and it's not really Mallus himself. So somehow Rip is just like all on his own, and then by the end he basically gets arrested by the company that he created, which is nuts and also really sad. It was just like, man, this is a weird version of Rip Hunter to actually experience, where he's losing it. And he seemed so calm before. Like, everything that's kind of built up to this episode was normal. It was like, yeah, okay, they're referencing Mallus, and it's like, oh, this is this big threat, which is why we need the legends kind of out there, because it could work out. But in this episode, it was like that final point. He thought he had it so early on. It's like, this is it. And it was just like everything like went away. He went straight into tunnel vision, and everything was this. What they're doing, bringing this body back, this is going to be Mallus coming back to life, and that's all that's going to happen. And even when it was like, oh, it's Damien Dark that's being resurrected, it was like, nope, this is the final thing, this is the final moment. We get here, we will see Mallus and stop him and kill him. And it was like, nope, absolute failure. And then Damien Dark coming back with all of his magic, just destroying everybody. And it was like, wow, that was a complete disaster. Like, you thought you knew something and you weren't listening to anyone else's ideas. Like, maybe it's just this, or maybe it's that, and maybe we need to do this, do things in a different way. And he screwed everyone over and got a lot of people hurt, and pretty much everyone nearly killed. If it weren't for Damien Dark, well, really, if it weren't for the characters being main characters, they would have died. But Damien and the woman ended up taking off, and then it's like, wow, thanks, Rip, you completely failed, absolute failure. So I don't know what's going to happen with his character, but I thought it was a really great change for him. I would love to see him be this sort of rogue element, if he can find a way to escape, his own, basically his own organization. But I was like, wow, that's very interesting. It's not what I was expecting at all for Rip's character. Even with this season, like I said, he was still very calm and everything. And then this episode was like the degradation of everything he'd been kind of looking for, as far as like, Mallus is coming, it's this new great threat, and we need to really stop it. And this was that moment where he thought he had it, and it was just like, we got it, and it failed. It blew up in his face, and people got hurt because of it. So I'm actually really looking forward to how it's going to play out for his character throughout the rest of this season, and possibly even the series, depending on how long his time organization continues throughout the rest of the show as well. So I'm definitely looking forward to some of the advancements with Rip's storyline throughout this season, but definitely excited. Damien Dark is officially back. We have Kuasa. So the two of them teaming up should be very interesting, both of them having magical powers. Of course, the woman who is, at this point at least, the vessel for Mallus, she seems to have some powers of her own. Like, it seemed like most of that seemed to really come from Mallus, but it seemed like she did have some abilities herself. So it was kind of hard to tell what was her and what was Mallus, with her being the vessel. So it's probably all Mallus, and she's just like the one who accepted him. But at this point, we have 3 minions working for Mallus, and we'll see where that goes. They might kind of cap it there, because it might kind of tie into like the last season, where it's like, okay, we have Damien Dark, we have Eobarthon as their speedster, and then we have Malcolm Merlin. So it was like, it kind of capped at the 3 main villains. So they might do that again with this season, where Damien Dark, of course, coming back, Kuasa, and then you have Mallus. And at this point, it's the woman as the vessel for Mallus, and then maybe something will happen to her, and then eventually Mallus will come in officially, and then they'll still be like the 3 main villains for the season. But either way, definitely a good episode as usual. Funny. The Return of the Mack thing was definitely hilarious. The crazy Stein thing, where it was like one of his ancestors, and it was just like it was Stein, but with like the little mustache. That was interesting too. It was like they are pretty much with the actor leaving. I can't think of his actual name right now, but with the actor who plays Stein leaving, they're basically doing like everything they can to kind of put him in the episodes either more or just have him in like crazier situations, like when he did the circus thing and they had him like singing and stuff like that. So it seems like they're really trying to utilize what little time we unfortunately have with this character. I am hoping that he like officially leaves, because it would just be depressing if he got killed. Like the whole thing is like, oh, him singing the nursery rhyme and stuff to his grandson is just like, well, that's depressing. Like he has to just leave. He can't just die, because that would really, really suck. So, that was kind of like that storyline, the Firestorm storyline, continuing in that regard. And it seems to go away, but it's like, well, even though they kind of reconnect by the end of the episode, I'm just like, well, I know, especially knowing that the actor's actually leaving, that's what makes me worried. I'm like, I hope that they just come to the realization, like, no, we need to have Ray officially do this. And I can't remember exactly how it ended. I believe it was like the resolution where they're like, no, we'll stick together. Because it's been like a full week since I saw it. I just, hadn't had the time to review it back then, and then I've been gone forever. So, I don't remember the exact ending, but I believe it was that they decided, Stein decided officially, it was like, no, I'm just going to kind of stay with you guys. So I could be wrong with that, because like I said, it's been a week since I've seen the actual episode. I'm kind of just going with everything that I remember. But it does have me worried, because they had that bit of a resolution where I was like, Jack's having, the memory loss, which was definitely funny. I think the Rip thing was probably my favorite part. Either that or the vampire thing. Both of those were pretty funny, where he's just like, I wonder what they're talking about. And it's just like right in the middle of everything. So I definitely love both those moments. But as far as how that story ultimately ended in this episode, it just makes me wonder, like, what's going to happen that kind of flips the script, where it's like, okay, well, we need to split up again. Like, we do need to kind of officially end Firestorm, at least this version of it. So I'm hoping that he just leaves. Like I said, I don't want it to be like he dies and it's super depressing and his daughter is left with one parent, even though we haven't seen his wife at all this entire season, which is super funny. Or last season either. We haven't seen her. I feel like she hasn't shown up since the end of season 1, I want to say. Honestly, it was the last time we saw that actress that was playing his wife. But I'm hoping Stein does not get killed. I hope he just, they make the decision where it's like, alright, I think I should go, and then that's how that plays out. So that's really my hope, because I hate seeing characters die, especially when it's super tragic. It's like, oh, he left his daughter and his wife and his new grandson, and all he wanted to do was be with them, and then he died before he could do that. So I'm like, I hope they don't do that. That's just effing depressing. So, we got the big crossover coming up fairly soon, so I would imagine that could be an easy way to kind of round everything out, where it's like that's his grand finale. Like, alright, big epic crossover, Firestorm ends, in that regard. I think that would be a great way to do it, where it's like, we get the Legends part of the crossover. And I'm, of course I haven't seen the most recent episode, but, there might be some stuff in there kind of leading up to, the big crossover as well for the Firestorm storyline. But hoping he doesn't die. That's like my main thing, is like, just let him leave the show. He's alive. Stein's just out there alive, not a part of the team anymore. That's always the hope for when I know an actor's going to leave. But definitely a fun episode, of course. Would love to know what you guys thought about it, so please comment below. Let me know your favorite parts about it, your least favorite parts about it. And naturally, I just want to know your reactions and thoughts and theories for Damien Darhk coming back to life. I mentioned that kind of early on. Sorry if that was a spoiler. I think about that now, because I was like, yeah, that was kind of just something that I saw. But yeah, that would kind of be a spoiler. It was like, oh, Damien Darhk's coming back. So if for no one is following my reviews anyway, so it doesn't matter that I spoiled it. But for everyone who saw it in this episode, whether you knew it was happening or not, I would love to know what you guys thought about it. And I definitely want to know, like I said, as far as theories go, and just what's going to happen with this version of his character. I would love to know where you guys think it's headed, because I have to wonder if he's going to actually die. Because Damien Darhk is such a powerful character. He's a fairly well-known character, with him having been the main villain for Arrow. He was one of the main villains in the last season of this very same series. It almost works for him to be like a nemesis of the team. Like, maybe he could die again, and maybe he gets resurrected 2 seasons from now. It almost works. He's almost already like a nemesis character, because he's been in 2 seasons in a row. Like, if they did Reverse Flash again, which they could, because Reverse Flash is like in the comics, he can die whenever and he will always show up again. That's like the point of that guy, is that he can die but he's like infinite. So they can kind of do that with Damien Dark and do it with magic instead of speed. So I don't know. I don't know exactly where things are going with him, especially him being like one of the kind of lackeys. I don't think that's going to play out too well, but I can't wait to see how he reacts to that one, because that should be pretty freaking fun. So we'll love to know your theories on how everything's going to play out with Damien Dark and your reaction to him being back in the show. And of course, I want to know what you guys thought about this episode in general, so please comment below, let me know, and thanks for watching.